Welcome back to Power and Persistence. Today's episode is really different and really fun for me. We don't have a woman, we have a male, but he's invited because he is my younger brother. This is Jeremy Fox, and I'm so happy you're here.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I just wanted us to do an episode together because we we have a similar journey many years apart. So you were born the day before I turned 12. So we have a 12-year age gap. Right after you were born, our parents divorced. So I was raised with married parents. You were raised by single parents. So super similar upbringing because same people, but like entirely different upbringing. But then we get into adulthood and we both found our way into entrepreneurship and business ownership. And we now are able to really relate to each other about that. So, why don't you tell everybody kind of your path, starting with, how college went for you and what spoke to you and why you are doing what you're doing. And then you can tell us what you actually do.
Yeah, sounds good. Kind of an erratic story, I guess. I went to junior college, so never went to university, never really had a sense of direction with my education. And that's just because I didn't know necessarily what I wanted to do. But I always knew I didn't want to work for someone else. I didn't want to go into a 9 to 5 knowing that no matter how hard I worked, I was coming home with the same amount of pay, so to speak. So that was something that was always on the forefront of my brain. And somewhere along the line, I decided that I was going to do whatever it took to make sure that I was able to have the freedom, both financially and just in my day to day, to live how I wanted to live. So that was kind of like, that is my goal. I didn't know how I was going to achieve that though. After going to city college, I got into personal training because I knew I loved going to the gym. I didn't really see a future with that, but that's something that I wanted to do. And while I was personal training, I saw that a lot of the trainers in the corporate setting are overworked and underpaid. So quickly, after I'd say only about 6 months of working at a corporate gym, I decided to go independent and work for myself. Now, when I was doing that, I saw that making it on your own is a lot harder than a lot of people believe it to be, as I'm sure a lot of you people know out there that it's not as glamorous and it's easily romanticized, but at the end of the day, it's really nitty gritty.
I was going to say, when
What?
you said you wanted to do it for, what did you say, freedom and what was it?
Well, just financial freedom and
Yeah.
also having my day run as I see fit.
Oh, yeah. And now that you're like in the beginning stages, you're like 3 years into your business, like, would you do you feel like you own your day or have that
I,
financial
I
freedom, or
actually
like jokes on you?
I actually saw like a meme or something. It was like I quit my 9 to 5 to do my own thing. Now I work 24/7.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I've never worked longer hours for less pay.
Oh, 100%. So like I said, like it's not as glamorous, at least not at the beginning, and I hope to
At
one
the beginning.
day see that side of things.
Mhm.
But anyway, so I decided to go into the independent field of my personal training uh, career, and I just saw that it was very sink or swim. There was there wasn't a studio, there wasn't really a program that offered any assistance to help you get your wheels turning, which is easily the hardest part, at least it was for me.
Mhm.
So seeing how many independent trainers there were and how saturated that market was, but how many of them quickly died off because of how difficult it was, I wanted to create a studio that offered a place where they can come in, run their own business, really stay above water even at the beginning, but also a place that fueled their business and allowed them to accelerate their growth.
And what
And
is
that's
it
where I,
at this point, Jeremy, when you're starting this and these wheels are turning? You're living in San Diego at the time, and how old are you?
yeah, at the time that I was just kind of like
Yeah,
thinking about this idea,
yeah. 23.
23, yeah, 23, 24,
23,
maybe.
no college degree, but like an intuition, right? Like you had this like inner knowing that there was something that you wanted to do in this field.
Yes and no. I don't know. I can kind of glorify it again and say like I knew I always wanted to be in this field. This is something that I wanted to do. I have a passion for fitness. But if I'm being 100% truthful, like that's just not the case.
Not that you had a
Um,
passion for fitness, but you saw a need and you wanted to capitalize on it. And that just happened to be the field, but you were thinking about this at 23.
yeah, 20 at 23, I'm just thinking I want more out of life. I
At
want
23, I'm in college, starting my night at 10 p.m., waking up at noon and just cycle repeat, turn in my assignments. And you're already thinking, what business am I going to create?
no, not quite. From 19 to 22, I was just thinking, what address is the party at tonight? So that was kind of like where my head was at for 4 years. And I think I almost overcorrected. I think when the party stopped, I was like, okay, I was like, all right, well, shit. I don't have a college degree. I'm not going to get hired at a fancy corporate job where my starting pay is anything worth having from my perspective.
Yeah.
Um, and I always wanted more. I've always wanted fuck you money. That's kind of like been my mantra is I
I've heard
don't want to
that in
have to
other
answer to
people.
anyone.
Yeah.
Huh?
I've heard of like a fuck you fund where it gives you that freedom to explore your possibilities.
Not even that so much, but it's more so like I don't want to take shit from anyone. And it comes from a very egotistical standpoint, but I believe like that's human nature to a certain degree. But for me, it was just like, I don't want to answer to anyone. I want absolute freedom. And that comes in all forms. And unfortunately, we live in a world where money is really that catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
At least I believe so. And I left college and I was like, okay, well, I need to make something happen. And the cards aren't going to necessarily be dealt to my hand. I'm going to need to create my own luck. So that was my perception. And because I just happened to stumble into the fitness industry because I liked working out on my own,
It's something you've
I was
done
very
forever obsessively.
exactly. I was an athlete in high school and that translated into the gym once I stopped playing sports competitively. I needed an outlet. The gym became that outlet. So I stumbled into personal training, but I was very observant while I was there. How can I make my mark? How can I find my path? And just while I'm observing, I found a gap within a market that I thought I could fill. And that to me was an opportunity to create my own ecosystem, my own brand, evolve that brand, and eventually obtain the fuck you status that I've always wanted. So that's just kind of where my fuel came from, if that makes
Okay,
sense.
so what did you create and how did you, I mean, it's a gnarly story. We grew up in California. You
That's so funny. I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm in Chicago right now for everyone out there listening. And all my friends at my gym tease me for being from California and they'll use the term gnarly as kind of like a stereotype. And I'm just like,
yeah,
we don't say that. I've never said that in my life. And now my sister,
I
10
say it.
minutes in, says gnarly. Great.
I
We're
think I said
going.
kids this morning, like, oh, it's kind of gnarly. Um, but yeah, okay, so we grew up in California, Southern California. You decide to go do this gym. You're 23, 24, I don't know. You travel around the United States. You travel around the country looking for where this gym's going to open because you're opening up a very specific gym where trainers come in to train their clients, right?
Originally, yes.
Okay. So you landed in Chicago
Mm-hmm.
alone. You
Yeah.
knew one person,
One person, a friend from college.
and then the pandemic hit.
Correct. Yeah. So to
So you're
backstep
alone in this
just slightly,
what?
I was going to say, just to take a quick backstep,
Yeah.
you said I was kind of traveling in the US, and to give context, we grew up in Los Angeles area. I went to school in Santa Barbara, so not too far north. And then I moved down to San Diego. So I just had been SoCal my whole life. And I think as in having that entrepreneurial DNA embedded into me, I think a lot of people out there could relate to just seeking out adventure, right? That's what entrepreneurship is to a certain degree. And I didn't want to start my business in a familiar scene. I wanted to explore. I wanted this adventure to be just that, an adventure. And because my model
I
was
would never think of my entrepreneurship as I wanted adventure. I just like had this innate drive that like I couldn't stop seeing what I could do next.
Yeah, I think there's,
Just
100 different shades
satisfied.
of it.
What?
I was just saying, I think there's, a million different shades of what it
Yeah,
looks like. But I think
I
to a
love that.
certain degree, we're all seeking that adventure. We're all looking to take a risk, bet on ourselves. So
Okay, so
I
you end,
figure if you're gonna jump, jump with both feet.
I like it. So you end up in Chicago.
Yeah, so Chicago is just a very concentrated city, right? The population met my requirements for what my business needed to succeed, and it
What
was very active. Hmm?
what were your requirements?
Because my original model was trainers just renting out space, similar to, like WeWork or a hair salon. I needed a place with a relatively younger demographic, like young professionals,
Hmm.
and also relatively affluent, right? I think personal training to a certain degree for many is a luxury. It's not easily affordable.
Yeah.
And there needed to be a lot of people because when you're reaching out for just a niche market and you're not speaking to the Gen Pop, the more people you are, the greater odds of finding that niche. If you're in a place that isn't necessarily very populated, it's going to be harder to reach a niche market that is going to be enough to really drive in enough revenue to succeed.
Yeah. And you've done that. You've succeeded. Jeremy, for everyone listening, you should go on his website and check out. It's called Fox Training Facility. What's your website?
FoxTrainingFacility.com.
Okay, it is gorgeous. It is the most beautiful gym space I've ever seen. Our dad is going to be listening to this. He's going to take credit for that design. I give it to you, Jeremy. Taking it away from
Thank you. Thank you.
it to you. It is so beautiful. I would definitely want to spend my time in there and just feel that vibe if I lived in Chicago. Um,
Definitely.
but I would make you train me for free.
I even knew how. Those days are behind me.
Okay, so you build out this gorgeous space. You're
Mhm.
trying to build this business. You must have been lonely as fuck. You're in a
I was
city,
miserable.
you were
Hmm.
miserable.
You mentioned the pandemic hit. I moved to Chicago mid-February of 2020. Lockdown was early March of
March
2020.
16th. Mm-hmm. Now this
Uh-huh.
year it was March 16th.
So the minute I get there and I have a lot of nervous energy.
Yeah,
I actually
we
remember,
share that.
huh?
You and
We
I,
share that.
you and
Yeah.
uh-huh.
Yeah. It's not fun. But I remember even flying out there to look at the space I was going to take over, looking at my new apartment. I remember I went with mom. She
Yeah.
flew out with me to keep me company. And, she knew I was nervous. And this is something that I needed support with. And I remember she was sleeping. We stayed one night. It was just a quick trip, go see the space, see if I like it, see the apartment, leave. She was sleeping that night in the hotel. And I was kind of just pacing. And I ended up just throwing up in the bathroom for quite a bit, and I remember just being nauseated. There was so much anxiety, and that that carried forward as I moved there. I still had a lot of nervous energy, but I was trying to spin it in a positive light, right? Use
The drive.
that momentum, that drive to
Yeah.
kind of fuel my aggression towards the opening. And then the minute the pandemic hit and I didn't know what the hell was going on, I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't know how to do anything, let alone handle a situation that the world hadn't seen um,
Alone.
alone. I mean, I went from 100 to zero really, really fast. And yeah, as everyone knows, the pandemic didn't go away quickly.
Um, but I mean, it kind of makes me emotional because if anyone's watching this, they see you and you're a full grown man, but I look at you and I see a 4-year-old. Like your face is the same. Like you're my little brother by a lot of years. It makes me emotional to think about how proud I am of you because holy hell, what a great reason to be like, I'm out too much. I'm going to go home. I'm going to look at a different space or I'm going to take a breath and be around my support system and then try this again when things chill out. But like you never wavered. You were anxious, you were miserable, you were upset. No, you never like shut doors. You never didn't move forward with this is what you wanted to do. You may have been miserable doing it, but you persisted through it.
That's true. There was never a moment where I said, I'm going to throw in the towel. There was never that moment, which is actually shocking to me because as my sister, you know that there have been things where when the going got tough, I kind of bounced. With this, I did not, and I made that clear to myself going in that I was going to see this through no matter what. I was going to go down with the ship if it came to it. But yeah, I was absolutely miserable. Um, Everything got delayed. There was one problem after the next with the build out, the construction of the gym. It could not have gone worse. Um, but I look at it now thinking like, well, hey, if I can go through that, I could go through anything. And the minute, the world opened back up, I took that attitude and I capitalized.
I am so damn proud of you. It is
Thank
so
you.
to me. If I how old was I when I opened my business? I already had kids, so early 30s. You have a 10-year head start to learn everything. Like by the time you're my age, like I feel like you're going to be so knowledgeable in entrepreneurship and business management, and you're all self-taught. And it's so inspiring.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, take the compliments. I don't know how often I hand them out. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank God this is recorded.
yeah, there's living proof. Um, no, I'm really proud of Jeremy. It's so easy to just be like, I'm done. And I think the pandemic for a lot of business owners was that moment of too much. It's too much anxiety, it's too much stress, it's too dark, it's too heavy. So to push through that for me was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but I did it with my husband. Our parents are still close to where I'm living. My friend group was still here. So it's just a wild, wild ride. But okay, so you persisted. Now you have this gym in Chicago. What's your model now? I know your model's kind of changed a little, right?
Yeah. So after the initial opening and we kind of found our footing, um, I quickly saw that only having one stream of revenue really limits my scalability and it leaves me vulnerable to fluctuation, things I was not comfortable with. So I decided, okay, how can I take this one step further? And the initial mission of the studio was to help fuel the trainer's business, something that I had never received when I was in that independent space.
How long have you been
So
open at that point?
at that point,
Yeah, like when you're like, oh, I need to like tweak things to really take this to the next level. Like, how long had you been operating?
it's 2020. Honestly, I mean, it's hard to say when I officially opened because it was like a soft opening.
Yeah.
We only could have 10 people in the gym for a certain amount of months. But let's just say I started doing this around June of 2021. I don't think we really opened our doors until the end of 2020, and that was limited capacity. So we weren't fully up and running
Right.
until early 2021.
So you're 6 months in and you're already pivoting.
I'm already pivoting, and I don't want to really give myself too much credit in the in sense of like,
Don't give
huh?
yourself, don't give
Yeah,
yourself.
because it wasn't like I was like, oh, I need to make a quick pivot. I didn't necessarily know what I was doing. I was winging this entire time.
This is nobody knows what they're doing. You can't
Yeah.
learn it and then do it, right? You can have a coach and you can take a course, but the lessons are in the process.
Right.
Always taking that risk.
100%.
Always taking that.
100%. And that's where I think a lot of entrepreneurs fail to see that a lot of these mistakes, a lot of these hours spent working on something that doesn't necessarily pan out, those aren't things to be frustrated about or to look at as failures. And I have many stories that I can bring up as
We can
perfect
talk about
examples.
failures forever.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
just like look at that and be like, okay, I learned so much from that process, and now I
Mhm.
can cross eliminate that from my repertoire, and I'm gonna just continue to maximize on the things that have worked for me, and I'm going to disregard those that haven't, and eventually you're going to find that golden formula.
Yeah. So you pivoted
Yeah,
that and you're pivoting again.
yeah. So I pivoted 6 months in, but it was more so out of boredom, and I think that's actually a that's I think that's one of my weapons in my arsenal that's helped me, but I also think it's worked against me because
Hmm.
sometimes I become too impatient and I don't let things build as they should because businesses take time, which is something that I've learned again and again and again. And patience is like my worst attribute because I don't have any. So out of boredom, I was like, I want more. I want this to be bigger, better, stronger. So I thought, okay, I'm going to market to the Gen Pop, bring in clients, connect them with trainers.
That's
Huh?
I've never, that must be a your generation term. Or
Oh, I don't know.
I'm assuming it's general
General
population.
population, yeah.
I got it.
But yeah, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna bring these clients in and I'm gonna connect them with the trainer. And I was like, how can I do this in a mutually beneficial way? Well, I stumbled upon an agreement where I would retain a majority of the earnings for the first 4 months of the client's contract. And after that first 4 months, the trainer would then have the opportunity to retain that client 100% independently. So that did two things for me. That added a second stream of revenue, and it also circled back and strengthened my first stream of revenue because now the trainer's business was more stable since their clientele was growing. And it worked well for me for a while until I got bored again.
Okay. So let's talk about this. You call it boredom. I
Mm-hmm.
call it impatience. So you and I
Yeah.
are, you were born the day before I turned 12. So our birthdays are one day apart. And we're 12 years apart, which I believe in the Chinese calendar is like the full circle. So like we're starting over, and I don't know what we are. I think we're both pigs. I'm not sure though. You and I think you can agree to this, like we basically almost share a brain in the way we feel things, the way we operate, our anxiety, our drive, which makes us understand each other, but like really challenges our ability to get along from time to time. Like we really butt heads, but we also see a ton of value in one another because we literally share a brain. Like mom and dad will tell me something about you and I'm like, been there, done that. Or you'll tell me a feeling and I'm like, you don't say more. I know exactly that feeling because I've had it. When I got married to Ben, the only person I've been married to, but he said, if there's one thing I'm going to do in this marriage, it is to teach you patience, Jesse. And I thought, good luck. Have I become more patient over time? Yeah. But when I see an opportunity or I see something not working, full steam ahead. Yeah, I just, um, I've said it in a different episode, but I had a friend once say, like, once you've reached like a certain level, can't you just sit in it for 6 months and just like enjoy what you've done? And I'm like, no, like my brain doesn't work like that. If it's working, I'm just like, what's next?
Yeah.
And
I 100% relate to that.
it's a blessing and a curse.
100%. It's important to celebrate the little wins. It's important to celebrate, all wins and take a moment and give yourself a pat on the back. I'll let you know when I do that. Which, as you said, you're cut from the same cloth.
Yeah. I think you do have wins though that you maybe don't acknowledge.
Yeah, I'm just saying I don't acknowledge them and I don't pat myself on the back is what I meant.
People have, it's my biggest struggle. I sit down and I'm like, come on, Jesse, like stop being so hard on yourself. It's okay to like yourself. Look at what you've done. And I'm like, nope, can't see it. Mm-mm. I know it exists. I know there's these things, but all I can see is like what hasn't succeeded and what I need to alter. And
Mm-hmm.
that's shitty, right? Because I want to feel proud of myself. But then on the other hand, if I sat and felt proud of myself, would I keep achieving things? I don't know. But I never sit back and think like, wow, I've really like I've created this place where like families in the community can come and like their kids can get services. I just look at that and I'm like, what needs to be changed in the company? What do I need to improve? What's not working the way I was hoping it would? So it's super hard. I think for me though, and I am hoping you see this in yourself too, my biggest win has nothing to do with my business. My biggest win has been learning how to self-reflect and grow and access those strategies as I'm going through this journey, because I feel like it's just made me a better human. And you've started that journey. And I think that's really important. I think that's what's needed, no matter what you're doing, to allow you to get to your ultimate success.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as of recently, I caught myself having tunnel vision since my business opened, and I lost sight of Jeremy as a person. It was just Jeremy as the business owner on the forefront.
Mm.
And that really affected my personal life. It affected my relationships and it affected the way I treated myself. And as of recently, I'm really trying to make a paradigm shift with everything that I do and how I do it. And it's a struggle, and you get lost in doing things a certain way for so long that's really hard to revert back. But I'm trying. I'm actively mindful about it, and I think as long as you're mindful about something, then you're going to continuously be making progress. And it's more so that 2 steps forward, 1 steps back mentality.
I love it. So what are you doing? What are you incorporating into your life to help you?
A few different things. I started speaking with someone, so I am speaking with this therapist to just try and figure out, trying to have actualizations of like what's working, what's not, how I'm feeling, why am I feeling this, and to change my way of thinking to become a little bit more from a point of curiosity rather than um, me being critical of myself, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, I think
So she's helping me with that.
I love that you're doing it. I always have called therapy a massage for the brain. I think it's
Yeah,
I think it's just
for
a
sure.
should be incorporated into someone's life. So that's been great, and you really like your therapist, so that's always a win.
I do. Yeah. So that was a good start. I've also tried doing smaller things, not touching my phone until, I've had breakfast and I'm ready, I've showered, I've had breakfast, I'm dressed, I'm ready to go out the door because, for a long time, the first thing I did is I'd check on my messages, start messaging people. So my day started at 100 miles an hour, and that was really hard for me because my bandwidth and my energy levels were getting spread so thin that I had nothing left. And then on the other side, when my day's over, leaving work, at work. So at 5:30, not checking my phone, not responding to any messages.
You
And
stop
again,
30.
at 5:30, that's when I'm done. Um,
Do you
if
think
something is,
to date someone has helped you do that because you're able to like put your energy somewhere else?
say it again.
Do you think now that you're dating that has helped you put it away because you have another place to put your energy and your attention?
She was actually the first person or first anything since I moved to Chicago to make time slow down. And I mean that very literal from my perception. I felt like when I got here, everything was just go, 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 go. There was no stop. And when her and I started to connect, when I would hang out with her, time to me truly felt like it stood still. Um, the heaviness of my issues or the heaviness of my to-do list became a lot lighter. And I remembered, even if it was for a moment at a time, how much I enjoyed just being Jeremy.
I think if she's listening to this, her heart just completely melted.
I doubt she'll listen to this, but yeah,
She better listen to this. She's gonna listen to this.
I'll make
That's
her listen to this.
great. Well, now I'm gonna tell her to listen to this because that's worth listening to. Um, you like cooking, right? You told me you started cooking.
Yes, and hobbies are another way for me to kind of distract myself. I think you love meditation, and I know you've preached it on to me personally. I
Preach.
don't know if it's for me yet.
I just said
Um,
sit and listen to something for 5 minutes. I'm not preaching.
not preaching, not preaching. You've suggested that
And
meditation is a great way to slow
walking
down.
meditations are wonderful.
Say that again.
Walking meditations, just anything to get you out of your head. But if she does that for you or cooking does that for you, that there you go.
Yeah. So what I was gonna say is like cooking, for example, and maybe working out even, but whatever it may be, if it requires my focus, to me that's very therapeutic because for however long I'm doing that activity, I'm no longer thinking about the problems I have at work or what needs to get done. And it allows me to just recharge my batteries a little bit.
I love it. Jeremy, one fun fact that I think is interesting, maybe other gym owners can relate. You've created this gorgeous space. It's
Mhm.
at your disposal and you pay to work out somewhere else.
No, not anymore. Not anymore.
But you did.
I did. I did. Yeah.
Why did you do that?
A separation. I just needed to have some sort of breakup. One, the monotony that was my day. I didn't necessarily want to see the same four walls from sun up to sundown,
Yeah.
but also there's always been a part of me that wanted to keep Jeremy as a person alive, keep that flame going. So to be able to leave and be in a completely new environment, that allowed me to just be myself because even to a certain degree, even though my setting at work is very casual, even though I'm very friendly with my trainers and the clients, I still have to put on a certain cap, right? There's still a sense of professionalism, which I sometimes should be doing a better job of. But
You've done a really good job, especially being like young, working with people your age and being in a pandemic where they're the only people you see. You really
mhm.
got that boundary and stayed isolated instead of befriending them because you wanted to keep that professionalism, which I think would have been really easy to cross that line.
Oh, I did. No, I've danced that line a few times. And it's been problematic for sure. And I think I've learned, and I think I've really matured throughout this entire journey where I I I don't want this to come off wrong. Um, but my goal at the beginning, and I think this is something that you can relate to, you've shared with me, the same, I guess not, I don't know if insecurities is the right term, but we had a desire to have our staff, or for me, my trainers like us,
Yeah.
right? We wanted to be that cool boss or the cool gym owner. And then I saw that causing more issues. And ultimately, I came to open up a business. This is my business, and I need to treat it as such. So I want them to think of me as a fair owner. I want them to think of me as an owner that has their back. But at the end of the day, if I need to lay down the line or if I need to critique them on something that's going on and they don't necessarily love that, I'm okay with that. So I think,
You're right. That's really, really, really hard because you want to be liked. And we're used to being that social person that's liked by
yeah,
people. But at the end of the day, if you're liked so much that you allow your business to fall to shit, you can't even keep them in a job. It's a shit. It's a real. It's a continually hard lesson for me.
I have realized that I just think it's the nature of the beast. And I use the word employee loosely because my dynamic with my trainers is very different.
Yeah,
But when you're
because
in the work environment,
they're more contractors.
because they're
And
contractors. Some are just paying me to operate within my facility. Others are um, taking clientele and representing the Fox name. But at the end of the day, they're still 1099 and they operate their own business as well. So it's just an interesting dynamic. But the point I was driving home is that I think there's just within a work environment um, a natural tendency for the employees or those that are a little lower on the hierarchy to bash and to gang up on those that are above. And I've seen this time and time again where they refuse to believe that the person that's running the show has any problems, and they tend to think that things are just the ultimate setting where it's just fully what's the word I'm looking for? They just think it's very glamorous, and they think that the skies are always shining,
Yeah.
and that things are great. And that's really frustrating to me because they have no idea how many problems come up. They have no idea that they're not the only voice that's talking to me. There's 25 more of them, plus all of the clients and now the members. And, we're not as profitable as I think they always believe because they are lost in the concept of overhead. And so I think that was really difficult. And eventually I got to the point where I was just tired and I was just like, hey, look, you guys aren't necessarily trying to look at things from my point of view. And I'm okay with that. That's not your job to, but it's also not my job to be your friend. It's my job to grow this company and make sure that at the end of the day, my bills are paid and I can walk home or go home and there's a roof over my head. So that became my priority.
That's so hard. And I am so impressed that you've already gotten there. It took me a really long time. I would say for me, hands down, that's been the hardest part, is that boundary, that separation, and knowing I'm not going to always, not necessarily be liked, but like when I try to do things that I think is good for the employees, it might not be their love language. They might not, I'm trying to make them feel good. They might not feel good. So then I'm like, well, how do I make you happy? But I need to, like, the company needs to make money. It's just really, really a mind fuck for me because, I'm a therapist by nature, a speech therapist. So we get into our profession to help people and to connect with people. And we're, working closely with families, and we form these beautiful relationships to transfer into business ownership. And then all of a sudden you don't have that close connection. People aren't happy with all the decisions that you're making. People want to leave your company to go somewhere else. Oh, it's gut wrenching but then what are you going to do? You're going to give up, or you're going to develop the hardware to push through it. It doesn't mean that when someone leaves, it doesn't hurt. I have new tools to manage that and to work through it faster and to focus on what is working and what is the bottom line. I'm just so impressed that you did that so quickly.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and no, I 100% agree with everything you're saying. It's very challenging, and I don't think I've mastered it. I know that you and I talk about it often, that it's just something that we're continuously trying to learn. But I do know that we only have so much energy, and we need to choose to allocate it wisely. And I think as long as we make sure and we're continuously mindful, that's a big word for you and I, that we're being fair and that we are creating an environment where our entire team feels safe and they feel heard, then I believe to a certain point, that's all we can do. And, there are certain things that sometimes just are out of our hands. Sometimes people will just want other things, or they'll want to stray from the path. I don't know, but I'm not going to spend more energy on it.
You can't please everybody.
Yeah, you just can't make everyone happy. There's never a decision that's going to be unanimously cheered on. And at a certain point, I'm going to use the energy that I have to grow the business, and I'm not going to let the social dynamics drain me and have it affect the business. I have to draw the line in the sand somewhere.
I hear you. What would you say? So, like, as business ownership, there's learning how to grow a team. There's the financials. I mean, I know you had a hard phone call before this podcast where you were just working, you couldn't get through to the company the way you needed to figure out your, like, credit card transactions. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
So there's all that stuff. And then there's the mental and the emotional part. What would you say has been the harder learning curve for you? Or would you say they're even, but just different?
Between which two?
Like the more logistical part of growing a business and then like managing your emotional and your mental state while growing a business.
Oh, the latter. I think the logistical, with enough patience and enough time can be learned. And, um, that's something that I don't necessarily think drains you. And I think really having that sense of morale is the most important thing because without it, that's when things start to get a little bit darker, at least for me. That's been the case. But when my mental health isn't strong and when I'm feeling like I have nothing left in the tank because I'm just worn out, that's when things become a little scarier, a little bit more shaky. So to me, they're not even comparable.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think looking back, we've had business coaches and that's been helpful. But what I really could have used was someone to coach me through the mental and the emotional aspects of this. So, I mean, that's what drives me now. I'm still a myofunctional therapist and a speech therapist. I'm still involved in my company and I want to be there for everyone that works there. But I do have this like desire, if I could help any other entrepreneur in business to navigate this other part of business ownership, I'll feel like I'm doing good in the world because that part, it's gnarly.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. And I think what you're doing is great. I definitely think.
I said gnarly.
Oh no, I noticed. I noticed. But I think what you're doing is great because again, like if I had someone help me just make the last 24 months any easier, it would have been life changing, and I mean that literally.
Yeah.
There were definitely some really dark times,
Mm-hmm.
and to have someone help alleviate that pressure and that intensity, it really could have just changed the way I walked around, and the way my thoughts just naturally came about. So it's definitely something that's extremely important, and I think often overlooked.
I also think that when our thoughts are productive and positive and our brains are more at peace and we're being authentically who we actually really want to be, we make better business decisions. We operate the business better. So by doing that piece, just by default, the business grows or you reach more successes because when you're operating in a state of anxiety or flight or
Fight or
fight,
flight.
wow, you can't make those good decisions. Like you
Yeah,
can't
100%.
moments because you're so tense and you're so blocked. Um, for me, getting to that point also like required going backwards and looking at why do I show up the way that I show up, right? And that's a shitty, like that's hard. But it's just as a business owner, I think it's so important to like look at all these different corners and work through them, right? There's just a lot to it.
100%. Yeah. It definitely becomes a lot more difficult to strategize and to execute when you're feeling like you're in a million places at once and you're not thinking clearly and you're thinking emotionally, not logically. It's a very slippery slope.
Yeah. Um, and now you're wanting to pivot again.
Yes.
You don't
Yeah.
have to talk about it if you don't want to, if you want to keep it under wraps. Still,
We can have, if you'll have me back on, we'll talk about that once everything's good to go.
yeah. So I will say though, you have big you don't I don't want to say you have big dreams because I know you're going to do it, but you're always thinking about the next thing and it's super inspiring and you have something that you're just getting in the works and
Mm-hmm.
Ben and I have been lucky enough to kind of like process through that part of it with you and hear what you have going on in your brain. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't doubt you. And I think you're doing a much better job of letting it organically unfold from a place of like peace and calm. but still having momentum than feeling anxiety to where you're like trying to force a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah. That was definitely my MO at the start of my latest pivot, was everything needs to happen and needs to happen right away. And then it just comes back to the whole, you only have so much energy. And it was draining me when things didn't go according to plan, which when you run your own business, they never do. And after a while, I just got tired of being tired, if that makes any sense.
That makes
Um, yeah. So, talking with you and, picking the brains of other people in my life, I realized by me stressing about it and me getting worked up about it, it's not helping the process
it doesn't fix
move
it.
any quicker.
Yeah.
So why have it become a double negative? Why would I have my business grow at the pace it's growing at while exhausting myself when it's going to grow at that speed regardless? That's just the game that I'm playing currently. Might as well do something else to at least allow my personal life to be fulfilled.
Yeah. And you just have
Fulfillment is a big word I'm working on lately.
information. Like our first box got checked, right? Because Ben and I have a little bit of like, I wouldn't say we're involved with it yet, but we're talking to you about it. So we were you with one process and you just found out that step one got completed. So that's exciting.
Yeah, it's super exciting. And this is actually the first time I celebrated a win. I guess I didn't even realize it.
You didn't celebrate. You didn't celebrate with me.
We'll have to make up for that when I take you to RPM. But
that's bad.
Yeah. But I remember I called mom and I just said, "Hey, this is what happened. I finally jumped this hurdle." And I just told her I'm really proud of myself because I got denied multiple times trying to get through this first obstacle, and I finally did it. And I was just really proud of myself for just not giving up. And it was the first time I've ever been able to say, like, good job, Jeremy.
Good job, Jeremy. I'm proud of you. You know what else you did to get through that obstacle? Because you're working with Ben and me, and we have a lot of balls in the air, and we have to pick which ball gets attention at which time. You had to be super, super patient to get what you needed from us.
Yes.
You could submit everything. And I mean, it's no joke. Like we had our moments where you're like, get me the shit I need. And I was like, I'm working on it. But overall, like you were very patient.
Yes. And that was one thing where, again, like, I don't know. I'll have to listen to your other podcasts when you release them. But you and I talk about being mindful all the time.
By the way, podcasts are all getting released.
I'll hype it up in Chicago, get the word out.
That's right.
But mindful is a huge thing to you and I. And when I was, working with you, I was just very mindful. Just be patient. Patience is key, and that's one of those things where, like, if you stop looking inwards, you could start to develop really bad habits, and it could have ramifications. So to me, I just continuously was like, let's observe the situation. Let's see it from all angles. And to me, that was, let's see it from my perspective, but then let's see it from Jesse's and Ben's, because that's equally as important. And that just allowed me to practice patience, which I said at the beginning of the podcast, you as my sister knows, that's just not my forte.
It's not our forte. It's really, really hard. We like things to happen instance, Jeremy.
We like them to happen yesterday.
You need to talk for me. But I think that one thing is, like I say, balance is bullshit a lot, because you can't balance it. So you're juggling, like, which ball needs to be supported now, which ones can you set down? And a lot of times, like, we had to set down the paperwork you needed because children, our other business, the business I'm starting, Ben's working with, his tax clients. And it wasn't that your ball didn't matter, but you can only have so many balls in the air at once, and you have to find the right time to handle each ball. Because if we tried to get to your ball in a moment where it wasn't the right time, like maybe the paperwork wouldn't have been done as well or as complete, and we wouldn't have had that win. But it's finding, the ability to surrender to the process and to trust the process and to allow it to unfold through our impatience, which you can call it impatience, you can call it anxiety, you can call it excitement. I don't know. It's each one and all together. But I'm really proud of you. I've seen so much growth.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And just to kind of like make a quick note on what you just said, because I think it's important. When you have so many different balls in the air and you're trying to do everything at once, you're most likely only putting in 50% of what you could be in each ball. But if you slow down a little bit and you organize your thoughts and your to-do list and you execute one by one, you're going to put in a hell of a lot more effort and you're going to get a hell of a lot more done. So that's something that I took a long time to learn. Still learning.
So guilty. Oh, this ball's been sitting here for too long, or this ball needs me, but I'm doing that. Like I get guilt, right? Like, why am I not with my employees right now? Why am I not at home with my kids? Jeremy's waiting on me. But you're right. If I try to do it all, I'm going to do it all half-ass, and then nobody benefiting from my energy and attention.
Agreed. 100% agreed. And it's just an ever evolving craft, and you and I will continue to work on it. And I think we've done a hell of a job up to this point. So I'm excited to see where the future takes us.
I'm so excited. I've said it 18 times, but so impressed by you. So damn proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You've done on my own across the country in a pandemic, just at the beginning of the business ownership and learning it all. I don't know. But I know you're going to achieve so much because I share a brain with you, and there's just no other option. You're never going to
100%.
You're never going to say, I give up. It's just not in your DNA. So thank you.
Which brings us to the title of your podcast. So
Power and Persistence.
Yep.
Which, to be honest, our sister came up with that title.
And she's the least persistent person I know.
You said it. Yep. But
that's actually
words.
I'll kind of like end it on here. Because I was also talking to Mom about this in the same conversation. As we talked about, like, I wasn't the most educated. I definitely wasn't the smartest person in most rooms, but I definitely think I was the most persistent. And I truly believe as an entrepreneur, that was my superpower. So I really like that is what you are capturing with your podcast. And I think people need to not undervalue how important it is to never give up, because it's way stronger than a lot of the other bells and whistles that you see, just in this industry. So
thank you. Yeah, I think the persistence is key, but what I hope people are getting from these stories is it's hard and you're persisting through challenging times. And there are things we can do during those challenging times to find inner joy and happiness and peace as we go.
Agreed. They go hand in hand.
I can't wait to come to Chicago to see new ventures. I can't wait for you to come home and visit us.
Yes. You guys need to come out, and I definitely need to come home and disconnect for a little while, recharge my batteries.
When I end the podcast, Jeremy, I like to ask everybody to give like maybe up to 3 life lessons or pieces of advice that they've learned that they would share with somebody who's starting a business or in the thick of a difficult time in business. What would you say?
Ooh, that's tricky. I guess to start, the best way to get ahead is just to get started. So that's a big one. A lot of people, I've heard other people say that they're waiting for the right time or they're waiting for this and that. I don't believe there ever is the perfect time. I think at a certain point, you need to just take a leap of faith and bet on yourself. So I think that's an important one. Second is just to practice patience and realize that Rome wasn't built in a day, and give yourself a break and celebrate those little wins along the way. And as cliche as it sounds, enjoy the journey rather than rushing to the destination. Because when I look back on it now, like, it's been a hell of a ride. And honestly, I feel like I missed it, right? Because I wasn't fully there. I wasn't fully conscious. So that's a big one. And then lastly, I don't know if this is the best piece of advice, but it's working for me a little bit. Just don't take life so seriously. And I think, you know, in all aspects, just enjoy yourself, do your absolute best, know that you left it all on the table and be proud of that. And if you can walk away saying that you gave it your all, then you did a hell of a job and you don't have anything to apologize for. And, you know, the outcome is insignificant when it comes down to really just like what you put forth during your time together as an entrepreneur and so forth. So
too. And I think when you're having fun and enjoying the ride, just by the energy you're putting into the universe, the outcome turns out to be better than if you approach
agreed.
it. So
100% agreed.
Advice, and I love you.
Love you too. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much for doing this. I'm sure I'll talk to you tonight.
All right. Love you.
Love you.